Now he has all his nominees, or almost all of his nominees, there. Everybody knows who they are. They've already started working as though they were in government with the Doge pair up on Capitol Hill and others. There is a much greater sort of deliberation and careful process going on. And I think that that will be to his credit. And voters like to see that. They don't want wild rhetoric. They don't want chaos.
Welcome to the Debrief with the Washington Examiner. I'm Tiana Lowe Doescher, here today with our editor-in-chief, Hugo Gurdon. Hugo, we are ending this year in such an odd, if not anomalous time. Donald Trump, for the first time in his decade-long political career, is heading into the White House with above-water approval rating. We are seeing corporate interests finally backing Trump. You have Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos donating to his inauguration committee, and also democratic openness to his transition. Yes. What's the main difference here?
Well, you know, at his Mar-a-Lago press conference earlier in the week, one of the things he said was everyone now wants to get on with him. Now, of course, there are some people who absolutely refuse to get on with him, but there's some truth in this. Obviously, Zuckerberg, Musk, and various others had giving money to the transition. He's coming in with a very different demeanor and much, much greater approval. Unlike 2016, when he lost the popular vote and he was being criticized and presented as a kind of an aberration, this time around, he's won the popular vote. It's impossible for his critics to hide behind the pretense that somehow he's an illegitimate president. Just as also foreign leaders, Macron, for example, Zelensky, and others, are having to adjust, and foreign leaders now too recognize that a repudiation or a disrespect of Trump is to some extent a repudiation or disrespect for America and its voters. After having been told that, after he'd been indicted, convicted, he'd been impeached, he'd been told that the voters had been told that he was absolutely illegitimate to be elected, they nevertheless chose him in preference to the Democrat. So he's coming in with enormous degree of authority. And this is allowing him also to kind of present a much more sober and demeanor, even though a more determined, a greater determination to drain the swamp.
Yeah, and this reversal of style and substance, where in 2016 and especially 2018 or in 2020, when he was kind of off the wall, 2020 very angry. But the policies were not that different than what we experienced in past Republican administrations. This time, according to the polling, he does have the mandate, where you saw exit polls say the majority of voters support mass deportations, they support the wall.
Right.
So what should we expect out of this new deliberate, disciplined Trump administration?
Well, deliberation and discipline are generally good things in administrations, and so I should think that he will be more effective. To the extent that he approached the draining of the swamp and policies in the past, in his first administration, and he didn't actually go for them with the same kind of determination, it was much more sort of flying by the seat of his pants. Now he has all his nominees, or almost all of his nominees, there. Everybody knows who they are. They've already started working as though they were in government with the Doge pair up on Capitol Hill and others. There is a much greater sort of deliberation and careful process going on. And I think that that will be to his credit. And voters like to see that. They don't want wild rhetoric. They don't want chaos. They want to see someone coming in with an agenda. And Trump is saying, I will keep my promise on this. I will keep my promise on that. I will keep my promise on the other thing. Voters like to see that. That accounts for his being above water, as you say, for the first time in the past decade. And it, obviously, we don't know how the administration will pan out. It hasn't even begun. But it's starting in a way which bodes better than the first one did.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's already engaging in statecraft. We saw him with all those world leaders at the opening of Notre Dame. And even though Joe Biden is still president, he's absent. We haven't seen him. We haven't seen Kamala Harris. When we look back on this era, especially this weird transition period where Donald Trump is the acting president of the United States, do we view Biden as the failed revival of Obama-era politics, or do we just view it as the final death knell of the anti-Trump resistance?
Well, I think it can be both. certainly Biden was effectively oversaw a third term for Obama. He didn't oversee it at all effectively, and by the end, his manifest incompetence to be in the position that he was in was one of the biggest reasons why why Trump was able to win. But yes, it's very difficult for the anti-Trump resistance now to pretend, as they have done for years and years and years, that his election victory was somehow either an aberration or the result of foreign interference. Voters looked at the choices they were presented with, and they were able, for as they rarely are, to look at an administration, two people who had led administrations, and decide which one do we prefer. They preferred what they had had during the first Trump administration to what they had had during the Biden administration.
And one key legacy of Trump 1.0, so to speak, was the remaking of the federal judiciary,
Right.
because Harry Reid's decision to blow up that judicial filibuster
Right.
really flew back in the Democrats' faces. Donald Trump got to do all of his confirmations. This time around, a lot of Democratic-appointed federal judges are trying to deny Donald Trump that ability.
Yes, it's a really fascinating thing that's going on, and that is that a number of federal judges who had indicated, some of them in a deal which was done between Democrats and Republicans, that they're trying to undo their retirement. What's fascinating is that there's a drumbeat of suggestions from Democrats that a real danger of Trump is that he wants to politicize the judiciary. And yet at the same time, there are judges who are saying, I'm not going to retire in case Donald Trump can appoint people who don't share our philosophy, etc. The Democrats don't simply accept, but require a politicized judiciary. Nominees for the Supreme Court, most notably, get sent up to Capitol Hill, and Democrats ask them political litmus test questions about how they will decide in certain cases. The Democrats absolutely insist on a politicized judiciary. So what we're seeing now is, it's remarkable to see the irony and hypocrisy of suggestions that somehow or other Democrats want a judiciary entirely free of politics, and Republicans and Trump do not.
And obviously, the Roe v. Wade era is over, but during that 50-year period, there was the Bork precedent where Democrats got to hear their justices or their judicial nominees say, we will uphold Roe v. Wade. Republicans couldn't even get an answer to that question because it was viewed as too political a question. So who's politicizing whom there? If Republicans were okay confirming people without knowing we didn't know how any of the justices were going to vote on Dobbs,
right.
And yet they get confirmed anyway by the right. The left is not the same thing.
It's absolutely not the same thing. It is just clearly the case record shows that Republican nominated judges are much more likely to disagree with each other and to step and not be in lockstep than the liberal justices. It's the liberal justices who vote clearly in lockstep politically. There's much more diversity of opinion amongst Republicans. So this is one of those things where you catch the left in projection of their own failings and faults. They project them onto conservatives.
And I think one of the most stunning differences between when a Republican wins and when a Democrat wins is we don't hear Republican senators calling to pack the federal judiciary.
No.
We don't hear them immediately demanding Justices Alito and Thomas to resign so they can replace them with someone who's 50. Yeah. And it's one of we'll see more if the Democrats want to go full resistance, because I don't think it worked so well for them the first time.
No, it didn't. When you see these flip-flops by the Democrats, it's like watching Olympic gymnastics.
Thank you so much, Hugo, and Merry Christmas. And Happy New Year to all of you. In the meantime, don't forget to check out the latest news previewing the Trump transition at washingtonexaminer.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends.